Imam Al-Ghazali, however, is one of the great revivers of the religion. He is one of the great teachers of the Ummah. And everything that he does has to be understood in those terms. And he is very similar to his young contemporary, who was Shaykh Qadir Al-Jailani. So these two men are contemporaries. When Al-Ghazali leaves his teaching, and he leaves Baghdad, and he goes out to discover spiritual truth, at the same time, a 17-year-old youth who was a Sharif of Ahlul Bayt comes into Baghdad, and that was Shaykh Qadir Al-Jailani. They didn't call him Shaykh then, they called him a student. And so these two people will work very closely together. Imam Al-Ghazali is several years older than Shaykh Qadir, maybe 18, 19 years. And Imam Al-Ghazali will not be gifted with a long life. Shaykh Qadir Al-Jailani will have a much longer life. But many of the things that Shaykh Qadir Al-Jailani will do are based on Al-Ghazali's program. That how do we bring this religion back to life? How do we put Muslims on the path of the hereafter so that they are living this religion in a way that is pleasing to Allah, and so that they are doing what they're supposed to do? And out of this will come Salahuddin, Nuruddin, incredible changes. They would have regarded themselves to be followers of Al-Ghazali and followers of Shaykh Qadir Al-Jailani. He was their teacher. He taught Salahuddin when he was just a boy. He took the hand of Salahuddin when he was just a little boy. Even he told Salahuddin, you will conquer Egypt, but the first time you will be defeated. Then the second time you will take it. That's exactly what happened in history. So these are great people. And one of the things we have to say about Imam Al-Ghazali, and this is the reason why I can't answer your question, is that he is very subtle in what he does. So what he does always has a certain intent. Imam Al-Ghazali is a master of the Sharia. He's a master of the law. And he always stays in the law. In his Ihya Ulumuddin, he just wants us to believe in Islam, to live in Islam, and to do what we're and to live Islam in a way that will take us to the garden and protect us from the fire and enable us also to live this religion the way that it ought to be. But Imam Al-Ghazali, the way he does that is absolutely amazing. So that's all I can say in answer to your good question. If you ask Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, he will give you the answer you want, inshallah.
Dr. Umar, this is a question from the sisters' side. What are some books you may recommend on world history and Islamic history?
What are some books that I would recommend on world history and Islamic history? Well, this is usually how I answer that question. And when people ask me that question, I usually send them to a book by Ira Lapidus, Lapidus, Ira, I-R-A, which is called A History of Muslim Societies. And it's a beginning book. It's fairly large, and in my opinion, it's pretty good. It's not going to give you everything. It's not going to answer all your problems, but that's a pretty good beginning. To be honest, we have to write our own histories. We have to do that. That's a big task. And there are things in our history that you probably never imagined. Switzerland, for example. You know where Switzerland is, right? That beautiful little country where my grandfathers come from, in the mountains between Italy and Germany. Switzerland. Did you know that Muslims were in Switzerland in force for 150 years? Very interesting. How did they get there? Caliphate of Cordoba. The Caliphate of Cordoba. What? And what would they be interested in doing in Switzerland? Oh, they were smart people. And how did they do it? Sea power. Because Spain is always a sea power. Portugal is always a sea power. But the Muslims in Spain and Portugal, they controlled the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. And they built incredible ships. They built incredible ships. And why did they build such incredible ships? There were also ships of war. Vikings. The Vikings. So, and why did the Vikings even appear in history? Muslim Spain and Portugal. Because Muslim Spain and Portugal became so wealthy that they dried up the wealth of Northern Europe. This is pretty well proven in economic history. And countries like what is today Denmark and Norway and Sweden and England and Northern Germany and Holland, they became poor because nobody would go there anymore. It's like there's no profit. Merchants are always looking for profit. The merchants that are in Italy and France and elsewhere, they no longer want to go north. Because what do you get there? Sheepskin, flax, wood. You go to Spain and Portugal, all you have to do is pay jizya. You pay the jizya and you're protected by the state. And then you get gold and silver and silk and oranges and lemons and everything in the world. It's really amazing. This is true. And I could even tell you, because you had people at the University of Michigan who were the masters of this. I don't know if the one in particular is still alive. His name is Ehrenkreuz. Is he still alive? You know, Professor Ehrenkreuz. He was one of my companions. He was the person who worked on this. Okay, so this meant the Vikings have to come out. And the Vikings, you probably have seen movies about Vikings. Those are usually exaggerated. But the Vikings will come out. Where did the Vikings first go? Lisbon, Portugal. Great Muslim city. Great Muslim city. And they sack it because Lisbon had never been protected from the Atlantic because of the fact they didn't have any enemies on the Atlantic. And they sacked Lisbon, and they took out of it tons of goods and women and children as well. And then they come down to attack Seville. These are all Muslim cities, Muslim ports. And the caliph at that time, his name was Abdurrahman III. He said, he was building the Mosque of Cordoba. And he said, I won't put a brick on another brick until we get rid of these fire worshippers. He called them fire worshippers. He also called them Normans, Northmen, Nurman. They called them Northmans. They called themselves Northmen as well. He said, I won't do, he said, stop the mosque. He said, we will fight these people. We will defeat these people. We'll teach them a lesson. You don't do this to our cities. You want to trade with us? That's one thing. But you want to do this? No, we will teach you a lesson. And the great Maliki scholar of Cordoba at that time is one of our famous teachers, Ibn al-Habib. He said, you are the Khalifa. You know, he didn't say you can chew gum and walk at the same time. They didn't chew gum then. But he said that, you know, you can still build the mosque and you can still take care of the Vikings. And they declared jihad. And in 100 days, the Vikings were finished. Finished. And they were punished. And many of the Vikings became Muslims. And they were settled in Spain in a city that I visited called Jerez de la Frontera. Jerez de la Frontera, which we called in Arabic Sheresh. And it always remained a Scandinavian Muslim city. And there were Vikings in Denmark as well. And ambassadors went to Denmark to see who are these Vikings and how do they fight, because they have these really fast ships that they use to attack. But what do they do with the women and children? Because they take lots of women and lots of children, we have to ransom them. In Islamic law, you must ransom the prisoner. All the women and children they've taken off to Denmark, we've got to get them back. This is also why the ambassador is going. We'll pay you gold, we'll get them back. But give back our children, give back our women. Okay, so they go there, but also they go there to learn who are these people and how do they fight. And one of the things they learn is that they have war boats. That's what you see in the movies, right? But they have barges. And the barges are where they put the women and children. The barges are where they put the gold and silver. Okay, so this means that they are actually not so, that they have vulnerability, because the barges don't move very fast. And that means that they have to always protect their barges at sea. And so they say, then this is the way we'll deal with the Vikings. We will build ships that are as fast as their ships. And our ships will have cannons on the front, which they call nefata. Nefata means naphthalene cannons. They're cannons that use gassy oil, and you put fire to it and it explodes and it shoots out a ball of fire, and it will burn up their ships. And then on the back we will have archers with crossbows and with regular bows. And if you want to look at, you've seen how samurais have made swords. Samurai sword is incredible. We made swords that would have competed with that. We made arrows. We were really good at what we did. So they say, we'll have our archers and they will have so many arrows that they can fight for a whole week without stopping. And then we'll have boarding areas, because we're going to conquer the Vikings at sea. We're not going to just drive them off. And then peace was made with the Vikings for about 16 years. The old king died. Many Vikings became Muslims during that time. The old king died. The new king said, the old king made the treaty. I didn't make the treaty. I don't agree. And so he came back, to maybe attack Lisbon and Seville, or other cities. There are lots of cities in Spain and Portugal. But also they said, set up towers along the whole coast. And you can go there. I'd love to take you there. The whole Portuguese coast still has those towers. And the Spanish coast also has a lot of those towers. But they were really needed in the Portuguese coast. And these towers are so close to each other that they can send smoke signals, light signals, mirror signals. And they have a whole code to communicate. And then any time a Viking ship appears, you send the signals out, whether it is day or night, and we go out and get them on the sea. You've got to fight them on the sea. You cannot let them attack you on land. And so the Vikings come back. The first time when they attacked Lisbon, they had like 50 ships. The second time, they had almost 70. 70 warriors. 70 ships of warriors, of Viking warriors. And the Muslims attacked them at sea. And they burned half the fleet. And they took all their barges. And the rest of the fleets escaped. And they went into the Mediterranean. They attacked Morocco, Nadur. They attacked other places. Okay? And that is one of the most important battles in history. You remember that when you studied in school. You never heard about that, did you? But that is one of the most important battles in human history. And then those ships, they will then take to Mallorca. All of the islands of the Mediterranean were Muslim islands. All of the islands of the Mediterranean embraced Islam even before Spain and Portugal. Mallorca, Menorca, Ibiza. Have you ever been to Ibiza? Ibiza. What word is Ibiza from? From Arabic. Yabisa. Dry island, Yabisa, Ibiza. And then they establish ships in Mallorca, and on that basis they go up to Switzerland from the Rhone River. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. We have got to write history. We've got to write history. We gave a lesson in Detroit, on African roots in America, African Muslim roots in America, and also pre-Muslim roots in America. And that's not a dream, that's not an illusion, that's historical fact. But why didn't we study that in the history books? We've got to write our own history books, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. For world history, you know, the great work of history is Arnold Toynbee, but he's hard to read. He's hard to read. He's beautiful, beautiful writer, but he's got so much history in his works that he's hard to read. If you wanted to read Toynbee, you really need some help, I would say. But also you can use like something like Encyclopedia Britannica. I don't know about Wikipedia, I'm not sure that I believe in that very strongly, but it can help you through this stuff because you have to look up a lot of stuff and you'll learn a lot of things. Sorry to take so long to answer a question. That's very impolite. Fudul al-kalam, superfluous speech. Wait. Okay.
Okay. This one is, Muslims have a great history, but now the Muslim world is too weak. What hope do you have for the current Muslim world?
MashaAllah. So the Muslim history is very great, right? What hopes do you have for the Muslim world? We have a difficult situation today. One of the great scholars of our time who writes about Islam is a man who's very friendly to us, and his name is Richard Bullitt. Richard Bullitt. When I met him, he was in New York at Columbia. He spells his name B-U-L-L-I-E-T, and he pronounced it Bullitt. He corrected me. He said, no, my name's not Boulier, it's Bullitt. And he's done a lot of good work. He has a book, by the way, Richard Bullitt, called The Case for Islamo-Christian Civilization. And I suggest that you read that book. Not very big, and it's not hard to read. And it will give you a lot of strength, because he wants to show that all this stuff said about Islam as the world's enemy and Huntington and things like that, he says it's complete nonsense. And he said, I cannot be quiet. He said, I'm a historian, I've got to talk about this. And so his book is very good. You should read it. A Case for Islamo-Christian Civilization. Very, very good book. But Bullitt studied also things like conversion. He studied things like conversion. He has the best studies of Muslim conversion. And they are also the most scientific. They're based on careful numerical evidence. And he shows, how did Islam spread? And how did Islam spread in Egypt? How did it spread in Spain and Portugal? How did it spread in Iraq, Syria, other lands? And Bullitt shows that usually it spreads, it takes about 200 years, 250 years for it to become majority. So you might say it's not that fast, because again, Muslims never made people convert, ever. We don't do that. It's not allowed in our law. Not allowed at all. So for Islam to become the majority population in Syria or in Egypt, that took time. And he studies that really well. It's very valuable. In fact, Spain and Portugal go faster than other places. Spain and Portugal are relatively rapid in the conversion of their majorities to Islam in many places. But one of the important things that Bullitt does is that he says that when you look at Islam, you must never forget the importance of the edge. The edge. He said you have to always watch the edges. What's the edge? Where would be the edge of the Muslim world? You're sitting on it. You are sitting on it. You are the edge. You are the edge. The edge is where, and he doesn't want to use the word periphery because we say this is peripheral, this is marginal. So he uses the word edge. The edge will be wherever Islam is flowing, so that Muslims who have background in Islam, like most of you that have families that have South Asian or Arab or other background, where people like that who bring with them Islam and Islamic culture are mixing with people like this, and people like this, and people like some of these brothers over here, that brother, converts. And when these two mix, then you have the edge. And he says the edge is where the most incredible things will happen. Why? I don't remember that he actually goes into that, but because of the fact that this is the place where Islam has to make sense to the convert. It's got to relate to that culture. It's got to receive challenges and have adequate responses. So many of the great developments of Islamic civilization will come from the edge. That, I believe, is true. And that's why also this community that we have, which is remarkable, remarkable. You know, it is the perfect edge. We are in a land which is at the cutting edge of technology and development and world power. It's a really strategic place to be, and the Canadians are too, our brothers and sisters to the north. And not only that, but we are a Muslim community that has incredible talent, incredible capacity. We do have that. We do have that. So it's like when we talked about the challenges and responses that we've talked about today, you can do that. You are capable of that challenge, inshallah. But we have to all work together on this. This means that we have to cohere. This means that we have to get our act together. This means that we have to build institutions. But we can do that bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. And I believe it is our obligation. And then when that happens, it can bring the whole ummah to life. And let's not be foolish and let's not go overboard. You know, let's be humble, right? Let's be humble. But a lot of our shaykhs have said in the past years that if the fragrance of God's remembrance ever comes, ever proceeds from the West, and the scent of it is caught in the East, the sick man will get well. The sick man will get well. Islam is like this. The Muslim world today has been hurt and crushed, you know, but you and I, we don't feel that so much. Some of you may, but I don't, because I grew up here. Okay, and that means that like there are things that we can do, there's work that we can do that other people, maybe you can't expect them to do that right now. They're in a really difficult situation, and it gets worse and worse and more difficult. The Muslim world is also the best real estate in the world. It's always been that way. And that's why it's very strategic. And that's why also there are a lot of people that they're not necessarily that friendly, because, you know, if, for example, the Syrian people have victory, and may Allah give the Syrian people victory, Syria is the most strategic part of the whole puzzle. I wrote a book called The Islamic Struggle in Syria. I wrote it when I was at the University of Michigan. And I wrote it about the tyrant that was there in those days, Hafez Assad. Okay, I wrote that, and you can get that book if you want. But that's one of the things I began with, that you have to understand that Syria is the most strategic part of the puzzle. If Syria ever becomes free, if Syria ever is able to do what the Syrian people want to do, then the whole configuration of that part of the world will change. If Syria becomes the friend of Turkey, and they would be good friends now, Turkey and Syria become extremely influential in the world. And whose benefit is that to? Well, it's to our benefit, but not to Russia's, not to China, not to a lot of other people. And if Syria and Egypt both become friends and begin to work together, Syria and Egypt become really powerful. Because one of the main ways that the Muslim world was controlled was divide and conquer. When the colonial period is over, we will cut your countries up into little pieces that can never work independently. And if Syria stands on its own feet, that puzzle begins to change. And that's why, unfortunately, the Syrian people have no friend but God. They have no friend but Allah. And of course, we have Muslims. We love them. We pray for them. You've got to pray for the Syrian people, because nobody's going to help them in the world out there. They will let them bleed and bleed and bleed. That's genocide that's happening in Syria. Call it by its name. It's not a civil war, it's genocide. Genocide, pure and simple. Okay? So they will be bled and bled and bled, and they will try to keep no one from having victory. And that's because Syria is very strategic. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give victory to the Syrian people. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We also have a sister who passed away today, and her name was Dula Muhammad, and she has 4 children, she has a husband. So let's all ask Allah to give her forgiveness, and let's all make dua for her. Al-Fatiha for Dula Muhammad.